Meanwhile, 3 weeks into the government shutdown, the Senate yesterday failed for the 11th time to advance a House-passed measure to fund the government. House Speaker Mike Johnson continues to blame Democrats for prolonging the shutdown, even as he keeps House lawmakers out of session. Johnson also continued to defend his decision not to swear in Democratic Congresswoman-elect Adelita Grijalva of Arizona, saying she could be using this time to help her constituents navigate the shutdown.
The chronology is important. Rep. Grijalva won her race in, I think it was the last week of September, after we had already gone out of session. So I will administer the oath to her. I hope on the first day we come back, legislative session. I'm willing and anxious to do that. In the meantime, instead of doing TikTok videos, she should be serving her constituents. She could be taking their calls. She can be directing them, trying to help them through the crisis that the Democrats have created by shutting down the government.
I mean, his arguments literally become more stupid by the day.
Yeah.
I didn't think it was possible, but on this point, they become more stupid by the day. You can help your constituents when they're officially your constituents, Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, make her a member of
Official.
Congress.
Yeah.
Swear her in like everybody else in your position would do. And then she can go into the offices. Then she can help who will then be her constituents. They are not her constituents now because you keep refusing to swear her in because you're afraid of what happens when the Epstein files are all released.
That is what some people believe, yes. But the more stupid the explanations get, the more that looks exactly like what's going on.
Well, I mean, that's what people have been saying from the very beginning. So whatever the cause is, whatever the purpose is, again, he swears in Republicans when the House is not in session. So he's not swearing in this one Democrat. And then he's saying, oh, she should be helping her constituents. She should be answering calls. No, she can't. She doesn't have a congressional office, Mr. Speaker, because you won't give her one. You are stopping her from helping her constituents get through this government shutdown. And there's no excuse for it at all. And Mika, this is but one of the reasons why Republicans are losing the political battle in the government shutdown.
Well, there is new polling out this morning about the government shutdown. The latest Reuters Ipsos poll finds that half of Americans blame Republicans in Congress for the shutdown, compared to 43% who blame Democrats. When asked who is feeling the financial effects of the shutdown, 21% said they themselves have been hurt by it, while 39% said it has hurt people they know. And a majority, including almost all Democrats and half of Republicans, said the expiring health insurance subsidies should be extended. Joining the conversation, we have MSNBC contributor Mike Barnicle, Pulitzer Prize-winning columnist and MSNBC political analyst Eugene Robinson, and the host of Pablo Torre Finds Out on Meadowlark Media, MSNBC contributor Pablo Torre. Good to have you all with us. And Mike Barnicle, I think we're seeing where this lack of swearing in Adelita Grijalva is going, because I think more and more people are seeing the stupidity of the explanations. But the government shutdown itself, the impact on the FAA air traffic controllers, let alone, I think most people can agree that Congress needs to get together and figure out how to open it up.
You know what? It's both depressing and dysfunctional. We have a dysfunctional government. We're flying around in airplanes. Air traffic controllers aren't getting paid, yet ICE members are being paid, things like that. Julia Ioffe was just on talking about the history of Russia.
Yeah.
We don't know our own history in this country. If we knew our own history in this country, it would be twice the revolt there was this weekend, I would submit, with the rallies all across this country. If people would concentrate on what this country has meant over the years, the decades, the generations, and what it represents today, there would be more outrage at what's going on. That's just my own personal opinion.
Yeah, you look at what the Speaker said, you look at what's happening, you hear what the Secretary of Transportation is saying, you look at the fact that our men and women in uniform who protect and defend our country are working and they're not getting paid for their work all across the globe? Think about this. Today, Speaker Johnson could pass a bill. He'd do it by voice vote. You could have the Senate pass a bill today. It could be signed by the president today that would pay our brave men and women in uniform and that would pay our air traffic controllers. Then they can negotiate everything else. But there are some basics here. And this whole idea that, like, hey, Democrats, you're going to agree to absolutely everything or absolutely nothing, that's a false choice. And again, Republicans, it's not like I haven't been saying this from the beginning. They're going to get blamed for this. Republicans always get blamed for government shutdowns. I was a Republican in a government shutdown. We did the right thing. We still got blamed. It didn't matter. We ended up balancing the budget because of it. But in this case, 72% of Americans agree with Democrats. 72% of Americans say extend those health insurance subsidies. That 72% of Americans are on the side of the Democrats. That's 72% of Americans who disagree with Republicans on the central issue that is shaping this government shutdown. You also had a poll that shows that only 30% of Americans believe that America is going in the right direction. A government shutdown with Republican, 30% believe things in this country are headed in the right direction during this government shutdown. 69% of Americans believe America is going in the wrong direction. And Gene, let's put that up. And while we put that up, let's remind Republicans again who are watching, you can pass a bill today that allows our men and women in uniform to be paid, allows air traffic controllers to be paid, or you can just keep going on with this government shutdown the way you're going on with this government shutdown, saying, oh, it's a clean CR, and not understand that 72% of Americans are against their position and support the Democrats' position. I know this must be all very concerning for them because it's been a long time since Democrats have been on the right side of any political fight when you look at the polls. But this is one of those times.
Yeah, it is one of those times. I mean, Joe, when you were in Congress, how would your party have reacted to a number like that 30% right direction number?
Yeah.
That's hair on fire alarm territory right there. You really, if they're not concerned about it, they ought to be concerned about it. The idea that they're going to somehow get through this without talking to Democrats or talking to the American people about the Obamacare subsidies seems to me absurd. And I don't think people respond to, like, the phrase clean CR. Well, you just go around talking about a clean CR. It's like, what are you talking about? Who cares? Clean, dirty, whatever. Do your jobs. And speaking of do your jobs, how would, in your day, how would the House of Representatives have reacted to a speaker who will not let them meet, who will not let them do their job? That is like the most outrageous thing to me, that Mike Johnson just continues to keep the House out of session. Is it all about the Epstein files?
Well,
I think that it's at least partly about the Epstein files, but it also seems to be a kind of paralysis because he knows that if they meet, they're going to have to talk about not only will they have the last vote on the discharge petition about the Epstein files, but they're going to have to talk about those subsidies. They're going to, the Republicans like Marjorie Taylor Greene are going to make sure they talk about those subsidies. So you're going to do it sooner or later. Why don't you just do it?
Well, I mean, in our day, I mean, I doubt we would have left town. We were an ornery bunch, but I will say this far into a government shutdown where you're not paying Marines You're not paying members of the Army or the Navy or the Air Force or the Coast Guard. You're not paying them while they're working, while members of Congress are sitting at home. Oh, would have never done that. We would have, I tell you what, we would have been back on the Hill and we would have been holding press conferences every day if we would have forced our speaker to bring us back into session, or we would have did what we ultimately did to our speaker, run him out of town. Jonathan Lemire, you know, we've been talking for some time about how Donald Trump understands polls. He understands the politics of this. And at some point, he's going to say, hey, we're taking on too much water. Well, right now, 72% of Americans say Democrats have it right and Republicans have it wrong. They want these health care subsidies extended because the cost of health care is exploding. It's skyrocketing. You also see now Republicans in Congress more are being blamed for this than Democrats in Congress. Question is, what are you hearing inside the White House, first of all? Secondly, when does the president step in and get this distraction behind him?
Yeah, White House officials have been privately predicting that it would probably be this week or next when Trump would really turn his attention to this. He's been focused on other things, the situation in Gaza first and foremost, but also his retribution campaign and the like. They think this is the week where he sort of starts to realize just what a hit they're taking. The polls, you see it. We've been showing them these last few minutes here. They're very, very bad for Republicans. Trump does have a good political radar, although I'll note that somebody was saying to me, a couple of people have said to me in the last week or two, they worry slightly that he lives more in a bubble now, a media ecosystem bubble, than even previously. Yes, he's still watching cable, but his social media now is Truth Social, which is all literally, it's just MAGA central. He's not really on Twitter anymore. He's not really talking to opposing viewpoints anymore. He no longer speaks to some of his old New York friends who could talk to him about Democrats. He's really becoming more insular and therefore maybe not getting a full read as to how this is hurting. But Pablo, it does seem like this is a moment here for Democrats. And let's be clear. The real world implications matter most. People are not getting paid. People are furloughed. Government services not being provided. But it is a political moment as well. We saw the No Kings rallies over the weekend. Feels like Democrats, for the first time in a while, have a little momentum. They have people behind them. And right now, polls suggest, with healthcare at its heart, they're winning this fight.
Yeah, I think there's an opportunity to do the inverse of what you just described Donald Trump experiencing, which is Democrats can actually break out of the bubble that has been sort of branded for them. This whole moment is about, yes, Donald Trump and all of the ways in which people were protesting, and that should be the case. It's also about the larger economic landscape. The unifying message that has propelled Mamdani in New York, that has given rise to lots of genuine, I think, instincts of economic populism across America that have sort of corresponded to frustrations in those polls is, what if we said the position here is actually against billionaires, the ultra wealthy, the people rigging the economy, for whom this administration has been their greatest friend? Like, that to me is the moment. I mean, the clean CR thing, I'm with you guys. That is hard to communicate to even those people who are losing subsidies, losing their health care, losing their salaries as government employees. But the whole idea of, what if right now the Democrats brand themselves around that populism in a sincere way? That's the crossing the aisle possibility that I think is quite real, John.